with respect. So 1.2 million mild traumatic brain injuries per year. So that if you add that up over the 20 years we've been doing it, we're looking at 24 million traumatic brain injuries that we've encountered since we went to war in 2001. So that's a lot of head injuries. 21.5 billion in costs. 600,000 to 1 million new cases of sleep disturbance per year associated with that. So it's about 50 to 75% of mild TBIs have one sleep disturbance or another associated with it. And about half of those are persistent. So 400,000 cases of insomnia. Okay, good. 400 cases of hypersomnia and 400,000 cases of OSA. And we'll look at kind of what the pathophysiologies of those could be. Now, I did a little bit of mathematics, and so if there are 20,000 optometrists in the country and they're trained in neuro techniques, you would only have to see 60 new cases a year, each one of you, in order to cover that entire population. I don't think that's undoable. I really don't. Especially if you were in a well-integrated system of care where you could get all the resources you need to do that. So I think these numbers are doable, even though they're astronomical. And the good news is, as I think you know, your therapies are very powerful. They've really changed how we do what we do. We first started out with a bunch of soldiers complaining that why can't they get prism glasses? Because they'd gone someplace and got some prism glasses, and all of a sudden their headaches went away and their diplopia went away and their dizziness went away. And so all of the rest of us in allopathic medicine said, what are these prism glasses all about, kind of thing? And that's how it all started for you, really, in the power and control of the ear. You've been doing it for a long time, but it took a while for that to really surface, but that's how it got there. So tiny steps, really. Okay, it's further mitigated by the fact that we don't sleep very well anymore. So not only do you have these injuries, the average national sleep time is about 6.9 hours per night, and only 49% of the population sleep 8 hours or more. And as I'll talk about sleep cycles as we're going forward, sleep cycles are 90 to 120 minutes long. And in order to really fully regenerate your brain, you need 3 to 4 ideally sleep cycles per night. So if you don't sleep at least 6.5 hours on a regular basis, ideally 7.5 to 8, you're going to end up in continuous sleep deprivation, which will have long-term sequelae for you in multiple areas that we'll talk about. And 35 to 40% of Americans report falling asleep during the day in one way or another. And that is a problem. So what are the costs associated with it? So this is some work that's been done by SCARE, and it's a little bit dated, 2010, but I can assure you it has not gotten better. But $13.9 billion in direct costs, $41.1 billion in absenteeism, somewhere in $100 billion in accident, alcoholism, and depression-related expenses. So that probably doesn't match up to the $1 trillion we're facing in dementias and Alzheimer's, but in a completely treatable condition, that's a lot of money to waste. So we need to focus on that. And then the last 3 things there, sleep deprivation leads to tragedy. And for those of you that are old enough to remember any of these, the Union Carbide accident in Bhopal, India, which released severe toxic chemicals and left millions severely impaired. The Chernobyl nuclear disaster, and of course the Exxon Valdez, which prior to the BP spill in the Gulf in the last couple of years was the worst ecological disaster we've ever encountered as a human race. All of those were directly related to a single human error cause, and that was sleep deprivation. So very, very serious problem for us. So let's get a little bit in the system. So I just wanted to mention there's a real serious problem here. It's really closely tied to TBI, and it's closely tied to the patients that you treat. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about our system. That's where Dr. Aman and I work. That's the Intrepid Spirit at Fort Campbell. There are 9 centers like that, and I'll talk about them a little bit. They each cost $15 million to build. There are 7 are at Army sites, and 2 are at Marine sites, Camp Lejeune and Camp Pendleton. All of them were paid with donations from the American public, so there's not a single U.S. dollar went into the provision of any of those. They're all excellent centers, enormously good facilities. They're costly to run, and that does come out of taxpayer dollars. So our annual budget is about $6 million a year, so you're looking at about $60 million a year that go into these centers just for the direct patient care of TBI within the Army and in the Marines. But that's only a small fraction, really, of the whole system of care, and we'll get to that in a second. But at the 101st, we're a very esteemed division. We date back to World War II in a place called Camp Campbell, now Fort Campbell. When you look at an army, armies are not what they used to be. They're now very specific units that have different identities and different needs. And so we have the division itself, the 5th Special Forces Group, who are a very unique group, the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, which was developed in the 1970s after the debacle in Iran when we didn't have the aviation assets to be able to rescue our own people and take them out. We now do have that. 44th Medical Command and a couple of other associated commands. So Each of those have different qualities, they're in different roles and responsibilities, and they have different requirements of treatment. So you have to understand your environment when you're beginning to treat. So overall, though, there are 52 Army TBI treatment centers. So if you take the 9 NICO and you add the 52, that's 61, I believe. And so each of those small ones take about $1 million to $1.5 million to run. So we're looking at somewhere about $100 million a year that's spent in the treatment of TBI, just operationally. They're divided into 3 different levels, 1, 2, and 3, and that's the level of acuity you can treat. And the 9 centers that are there are listed there. They're designed into a hub-and-spoke concept where there's a NICO main, which was quote-unquote the mothership, which is the main research facility, and it's the Walter Reed Military Medical Center on the Bethesda campus, right across from NIH and NIMH. And their job is to do fundamental treatment research in particularly translational, but also some fundamental scientific research in TBI. They're closely aligned with United States Medical University of the Health Sciences, the medical school, which is a heavy research facility, and they're directly associated with the research portfolio command at USERL, also up in the Fort Campbell, up in the National Capital area. So